Mitch, Donovan, appreciate you guys for coming on.
Thank you.
I don't know how long this has been brewing between you two to have this debate, but you guys brought this to my attention. I thought this would be a good conversation from both sides of the aisle when it comes to the topics that we're going to discuss today. Mitch's been on plenty of times. I've always enjoyed you coming on and talking with me. Donovan, it's nice to meet you. Mm-hmm. So how we're going to do this is, we were kind of do like a little more like structured and 10 minutes back and forth, blah, blah, blah. But I think you both are comfortable with just doing an open debate, just back and forth. You guys know each other, so I think you guys would be respectful. So let's start. So the whole premise of this debate is going to be it's unethical to eat meat in the modern society because it's unnecessary and harmful. It's kind of what our discussion is going to be around today, right?
100%.
All right, cool. So I don't know who wants to open up.
You want to kind of...
Yeah, I guess I'll just pretty much, that's my claim here, what you just said, the premise, that it's unethical to eat meat just because modern science and nutritionists have told us that you can live and thrive on a plant-based diet, so there's no need for all the killing that we do, 90 billion land animals a year.
About, is it 90? I thought it was not. I thought it was
80 to 90 land animals,
and is that not including fish.
Fish is like
trillion.
3 trillion a year, so just because of all the bycatch and things 100%. Like that. But yeah, just basically, I believe that it's unethical.
Okay. First and foremost, how do you define when you say it's unethical? What do you mean by it's unethical? Like, how are you defining that?
Pretty much unethical. I'd just say immoral. In simple terms, wrong.
Right. Okay. So when you're saying it's wrong, is it wrong objectively? Like it's wrong to the point where we're prescribing obligations to behave a certain way, or are you just describing that it's wrong? Are you prescribing that we need to do something about it, or are you just describing that it's wrong?
I should clarify, it's not everyone in the entire world. I get that there are tribes that do it for survival. I'm talking modern society. Okay. It's completely immoral and it shouldn't be done.
Okay, and where... I don't want to turn this into an ethics debate, but where are you getting your morals from? Like, what's your moral standard? Where's your moral standard based off of?
I just think that any unnecessary harm is just wrong.
Okay. So again, bro, I'm not trying to say that veganism's wrong. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to say that it's false. But when you make the claim of ethics or morality, I think that's where we get into a whole different topic of discussion. Mm-hmm. Before we further define that, though, you don't consider plants as sentient, right?
No.
So you don't consider plants as falling under that category of unnecessary harm?
No.
Okay. Do you count insects on that or no?
Insects is, it's kind of a gray area. There's a study, I believe, done by E.O. Wilson is his name. And he did a study that showed that some bugs are like a hive mind kind of thing. Like it's just like they don't have individual experience. But that's a whole nother discussion. But obviously, I'd still say that we shouldn't just go around killing bugs unnecessarily.
Okay, so
I see ants on the ground, and whenever I walk, I literally look for ants. That's just like I've just been on this journey for so long. It's just things that I think of.
Okay, so you are or are not putting insects in that category, or is it a gray area?
It's kind of
moral protection.
It's kind of a gray area, but I'd still say let's not go out of our way to do it.
So where then would the line be drawn? Where are you drawing the boundary of morally protected versus morally not protected?
Sentient individuals.
Right.
Individuals that have a subjective experience.
Okay, and are we defining that based off of, how are you defining the sentient experience? So what are your parameters for sentience?
A brain, central nervous system, neurons, that sort of thing.
So what about the brain and the central nervous system qualifies the sentience?
It's just science. I don't have an exact document or a study.
Scientists
have said that we have individual experience, and just like a kidney does these things, like a central nervous system, a brain does these things, gives us our subjective experience and things like that. Plants do not have that.
Okay, so what about are you familiar with what nociception is? The idea of nociceptive receptors in the brain and in the body. Are you familiar with that at all or no?
No, in humans?
And just in animals in general.
Oh, okay.
Because bugs have this as well, insects have this as well. It's the ability to actually feel pain and anticipate pain due to tissue damage, essentially.
Okay.
So if an animal...
All bugs have that?
Yeah. So
Wait,
generally speaking.
you said anticipate pain, but they have tissue damage already?
So no, so if they can if I'm about to smash a fly, that fly to a degree understands that there is an anticipation of pain coming its way because it has these nociceptor or these particular neurotransmitters that are called nociceptors in the body. Okay. And again, all animals have this except for plants, essentially. And that's why a lot of vegans will draw that ethical line with whether or not there is the ability to feel pain, let alone anticipate pain, and other varieties that encapsulate sentience. And if we were just to define sentience as, and this is why I wanted to give you the opportunity to do so, as the ability to feel pain, having social hierarchies, having a central nervous system. I think if those three were, do you agree that those three?
I mean, I don't think the social hierarchies is necessarily necessary.
If anything, I think then that makes the argument almost easier. So you're saying that just pain, the ability to feel and experience pain,
not necessarily pain either. Just have a care for your life, have a subjective experience.
Right. So if we're defining sentience, though, based off of theory of mind, and we can't ever really prove where that line is drawn, specifically if we're allowing insects to be the arbitrary gray zone, it's like, do we draw the line at ants? Do we draw it at spiders? Like, where do we draw the line on the insects? That's got to be the first thing if we can't fully define the sentience. Go ahead.
But I mean, the defining marker isn't a theory. It's based on what you actually have: a brain, a central nervous system, and we can talk about whether bugs are in there, but we can at least draw the line that animals are definitely in there, which is the main topic of what we're discussing today.
100%. But
yeah,
if we're saying animals, though, like, I don't know how you can dismiss or disqualify the moral protection of certain living creatures.
Insects, you're saying?
Yeah, in general, yeah.
Okay.
I think plants is on that line too. I personally do. I think if you're going to have an ethical, especially if your ethics is coming from a preference, because the thing is, if you don't have a moral ground to really foundationalize where your ethics come from, like if you don't have a moral standard, I'm assuming, are you religious at all?
I mean, I'd say more spiritual, but
okay. So then I'm assuming most of if I say the term secular humanism, does that make sense? Does that ring a bell to you at all?
No.
So most arguments, if they're not premised from a epistemological foundation, epistemology meaning how do we know what we know? Most arguments are going to stem from, on that front, from what you believe in and why, usually a religious foundation. So I believe it's wrong to kill animals because God said so, right? I believe we draw a moral line that insects aren't included because the Bible and God said so. That could be like an easy way that if you had that as your moral foundation, we could actually have a conversation based off of the actual grounds from which your morality stems from. But if you can't really define where you get good or where you get bad, it ultimately becomes a preferential thing. I don't think people should eat meat because I don't think it's right for animals to suffer. But where am I morally obligated at that point? What makes me obligated to follow your preferences?
I mean, absolutely nothing. We all have free will, but I'm just saying that I'm kind of confused with the question, honestly. But
you say eating meat is bad and it's unethical. My question is, where are you getting bad and the unethicality from?
Just because based on the fact that it is completely unnecessary.
Okay, so the necessity now is the question at hand.
Yes.
Okay.
But I do want to say, even so, like if we can just say that we have to eat something, we have to cause harm to survive to some degree at least. And if we're just saying we don't know where to draw the line, if we still want to cause the least harm possible, still being vegan is the best option because
we define insects as being sentient, which is a part of my argument. But keep going.
Why is that?
Because if you include the sentience of insects, you're now dealing with all of the byproducts of pesticides and crop farming, which gets into the tens of trillions if you include the insects on that list of indirect killing rather than the direct killing that you're alluding to.
But do you know how much more crops we have to make to feed the animals that we slaughter instead of just us eating them directly?
Let's get rid of then the crop farming for the animal farms. Let's just get rid of that. Let's just talk crop farming versus killing the indirect killing of certain animals and insects. Let's just say rodents, birds, the indirect killing, just as an isolated category versus the direct killing. What gives you the moral ground to disqualify all the indirect killing and only qualify the direct killing especially if the indirect killing is exponentially more than the direct.
The indirect is not exponentially more than the
If
direct.
we include insects, it is.
Okay, well, yeah.
That's why the argument will shift.
I got you. Okay, I'm with you. That's why the argument shifts. But because that is a necessity, like we have to eat something to survive. That we're doing what we need to.
Right.
Not,
So how
not
does
anything.
necessity correlate with moral obligation? How is necessity and morality now going hand
I
in
mean,
hand?
because if we didn't have that, I mean, we wouldn't eat anything then, and we'd die, and we wouldn't even be having this discussion.
I agree. No, I agree that this is from my worldview.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm giving an affirmative, I agree that there is no way to survive without killing. I agree with that.
Yeah.
The question then becomes, how are we qualifying the moral standard from which our choice of killing is actually premised? And if your standard is insects don't count, then we can have the argument that land animals and fish cause more direct killing than the indirect killing of the rodents and the birds and the non-insects. I'll agree with that. But then that shifts the argument. So from this point forward, do you want to include or disclude insects as part of it?
I think we should disclude insects
Disclude them,
just
okay.
because I don't like I said, there has been studies done on that, but I don't know enough about that to make
Then
claims.
my question though is, if there's an ambiguity of the sentience of insects, if we're uncertain, if there's a reasonable doubt, should we err on the side of disqualifying them? It's like, if you know this thing might be alive, I don't really know, let's just throw it away just in case. Should we err on the side of qualifying it or disqualifying it if there's reasonable doubt for the sentience of insects?
I think we should rule for just disqualifying them.
Damn,
just so,
I think we need to qualify. Okay, I don't want to be
just for our discussion.
yeah.
I don't mean like in our views.
because you're not stopping on
discussion.
ants and stuff 100%. I get it.
Yeah,
100%.
And,
Okay,
and
for
that's not the
discussion.
main thing for my discussion. I mean, that is something to be had, but I think the main thing is still the animals. I'm
Okay.
trying to reduce the suffering of the animals.
Okay. So if that's the case, it just shifts the argument. I think it's unethical to not eat meat. I think when you look at the nutritional density and we talk about the essentialism of certain nutrients that can only be provided through animal proteins, and you look at how the human anatomy has evolved or adapted, however you want to define it, the way in which the human anatomy has adapted to require certain essential nutrients, you can only get that through meat.
What nutrients can you not get through a plant-based
Let me ask you this. Are you familiar with there being certain nutrients you can't get from plants?
diet? B12.
Any other ones?
That's it.
Are you final answer? We're locking it in. B12 is the only one.
Yeah.
Okay. L-carnitine. Do you know what that is?
No.
Okay. Choline,
No.
taurine,
No. I mean, I've heard
Zinc.
of these. I've heard of these.
zinc, iron, heme iron in particular.
Heme. Yeah. No. That's an animal. It comes from animals.
Right.
Yeah.
So but do you understand the essentialism of these nutrients for human development?
When you say essential, I mean there's vegan. There's people that have been vegan for 70+ years.
Do you know what I mean when I say essential?
I mean, from what I'm getting, it's essential to live.
Dietary essentialism means that the human body cannot produce it, so we need it from an external source. So it is essential to live. It is essential to
But
live.
how if there's people that have not had it for decades?
there's a twofold front on that. It's not that this or that. People haven't been getting these essential nutrients, but they've been thriving. Most of it is supplementation. It's almost all of it.
Most vegans that I've heard of that have been vegans for decades only supplement B12.
But they still supplement, is my point.
Well,
If they're
so
not-
does the animal feed that you guys eat. You got
Where are they getting that
B12. B12
supplementation?
doesn't
So
come from
before we do the
animals.
whataboutisms, before you start going, but what about? Let's do the B12 stuff first. What were you saying?
Where do you get those supplements from?
Well, that's a part of the question. Is like, how are you actually? They're synthesizing it in a lab, so it's not technically coming from an animal, so they can justify it that way.
And then when we say it's a necessity, or what did you say it was
Essential.
essential for life, and you're saying it's not because there's people that are vegan for 70 years, I guess that's going to be.
Essential for proper nourishment and development.
Well, I mean,
and then we're defining proper.
This
I
is
guess.
going to be like an opinion, right, on what's essential. Like
No.
like what condition of life do each of these individuals have?
Fair,
That's
fair.
kind of what I'm.
But
going
if we're
at.
talking about how a child, because this is where the ethics of, for me, if you have a vegan child, this is where for me the ethics really come into play. B12 is the biggest one, and unless you're intentionally supplementing that with your kid, which I think the argument stops there. If veganism is ethically superior, and we're not defining where we really get the morals or the ethics from, is malnourishing your kid more ethical than providing them more sufficient nourishment? That becomes the question.
Okay, well, I think we still have to talk about first where B12 comes from.
Okay. So
'Cause-
where would you go ahead? Where would
I
you?
mean, the same supplements that we're taking as vegans to get B12 is the same B12 that's going into the animal feed. Animals are all supplemented
But you
B12. They don't make it in themselves. B12 and other.
No, they do. Plants or animals synthesize. That's the thing, bro. We're getting into a part of the argument where, like, if you didn't know what L-carnitine was and what these certain nutrients are, I just don't know unless you can give me the scientific justification behind you saying or making claims that animals can't synthesize B12 in their bodies. They need to get it from a specific feed that humans give them. Which,
I mean, I think we could
but
Google it.
how did we do it 200 years ago? Or 1,000
Because
years ago?
because it was more in the soil. Our soils are so depleted that it's not so much in the soil. The animals get the
But
B12 from the nutrients in the plants.
But the animal is getting the B12. The animals are getting the nutrients naturally from the plants, and the animal's anatomy is the chemical factory that synthesizes the chemicals that we need to get from them. Humans cannot process and get certain things from, let's say, grass, but cows can. So if a cow eats grass and it gives them these nutrients, then we eat the cow because we eat the cow, which gives us the nutrients that the cow got from the grass. We indirectly got the same nutrients from the grass. So the question is, can humans get that same direct nutrients from the grass without having that intermediary?
Probably not, but
So then you have to supplement.
yes.
And if you have to supplement, it is by definition a more deficient diet. Would you agree with that?
I would agree, but the animal feed is 99% supplemented too.
Okay, we can.
So we're still getting the same B12 from the same area.
okay.
And again, I want to say I
We're
haven't
not
heard
getting it
of
from the same area. And the
I mean-
bioavailability, going back to my original argument, is the unethicality of only having plants in your diet specifically for developing children because of all of those essential nutrients they're missing out on. And the only way to get those essential nutrients are from those animal sources.
Yes, but this is why, again, it comes back to the argument of modern society, why it's not ethical, because there's plenty of instances of vegan children being raised healthily.
It becomes that there's these extra things that are involved. So if we're talking, okay, just for modern times, you're telling me then somebody that's on a vegan diet would have to just jump through hoops to ensure that they're getting the same nutritional density and bioavailability of certain nutrients that they need for development without needing to eat the animals. You're saying that it's not that big of a deal having to make those extra accommodations?
I don't think so. When you say jump through I mean, we got to talk about it from the perspective of the victims for a second, because that's who it's mainly about.
The
When you
cows
say,
and the animals?
Yes. When you say jump through hoops.
But not the insects, right?
No. Yeah.
Okay,
When you
just
say
cows and
jump through hoops, I mean, they have to literally live in slavery, be abused their entire lives just to go to slaughter. I mean, so we have to go to the store and get some B12?
I think that,
I mean, I don't think that's jumping through hoops, and that's the least that we should do for
I think when you're thinking about the development
our
of your kid, and
companions.
you need to know the actual dosage from which they need certain nutrients, namely nutrients you didn't know the necessity of, like L-carnitine, like zinc, iron, choline, taurine, all these different nutrients that you can only get from animal proteins.
that
you'd have to be very
I've
specific.
honestly never heard of, because people aren't dying of taurine deficiencies. People aren't
No,
dying of
not directly.
L-carnitine
Not directly.
deficiencies.
Not directly, but
They're
when you have
getting cardiovascular disease, heart disease.
Not directly. And no, the cardiovascular disease argument, we could
I
have.
meant heart disease, but yeah.
The heart disease, we could have that whole argument too. That's a different convo.
Mm-hmm.
Not directly, they're not dying from lack of taurine or L-carnitine or
Mm-hmm.
even B12. They're not dying directly from a lack of B12.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the neurological damage that occurs in children when they are devoid of certain B12 levels?
No.
Right. See, this is why.
I mean, I looked up an article on that
Bro,
specific.
No, bro.
or
These are
anything
the
on that specific.
These are the foundations
topic.
of your argument. And if the foundations of your argument are devoid of certain knowledge, for me, how can you have then a strong, confident stance when we haven't really even gotten into the epistemological foundation from which you define good and evil, or right or wrong, which is in and of itself a whole nother argument. I'm just granting that we agree on the same good and evil right now.
Mm-hmm.
We agree on the same right and wrong. I'm just granting that, even though deep down, that in it is in of itself, I think, a whole nother debate we would have to have.
Yeah.
Because unless you're framing it from the Bible or an objective authority, let's say the Hindu fucking Sanskrit Vedas was your moral justification.
Mm-hmm.
If you just have a moral justification to define how you qualify good, evil, bad, or bad versus harm versus not harm, how you're qualifying harm reduction versus whether it's direct or indirect, for me, that is in and of itself something I'm just granting, okay? Because if we want to get to that argument, that is a whole nother thing. But that requires certain grounds from which your argument stems from, like knowing what L-carnitine is and what it does to the brain for developing children, let alone what choline, zinc, heme iron, taurine, vitamin B12, like we talked about.
I don't think I need to know that to have my stance on being vegan. I just don't.
Even if it's malnourishing children and it's causing an underdevelopment to where it causes indirect harm?
You said it's anecdotal, but like I said, there's been multiple cases of vegan children.
It's not anecdotal that B12, L-carnitine, and every single nutrient that I listed that you can only get from animal proteins, there is no anecdote. This is hardcore science that they are necessary for proper development of children. And if we're ignoring that, like, it's not that big of a deal, what's the ethics of of us now causing these kids to be underdeveloped and causing these kids to have a worse start from life in terms of their actual physiological and neurological development?
Do you have any of these studies?
We can pull up the
infants deprived or on vegan diet.
That's kind of what I wanted to weigh in on.
That's another combo. We can't conduct studies.
But you're making that claim.
I'm making the claim
very sternly.
I'm making the claim off the science that you need essential nutrients. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I mean, I don't think that you necessarily need those.
So you disagree
no.
with that?
Yes.
You don't agree that our anatomy needs those things?
I'm not going to say anything on that because, again, I don't know enough about those. But I will say that there is many cases of people being vegan and being healthy.
But you're saying healthy. How
And I have studies or I have a study in here. It shows that
let me see it.
the biggest.
While he's looking for that,
Yeah.
I've got two questions right
go
now,
ahead.
just from his point of view.
Yeah.
Do you think that if everybody was to go to plant-based diet, that would actually, even if we did have to supplement these things that he's talking about, do you think the deaths of animals would actually shrink? And that would be okay? Like the number of animals that had to be slaughtered in order to supplement what he's saying, the B12 and zinc and all this stuff?
I don't think we would need it.
You don't think we would need it?
I don't think
okay.
we would need
So
it.
I thought
that's a part of the argument that's a whole nother argument.
I was just saying because when it comes down to deaths of animals, so I'm wondering if
This is just the
if we can
abstract, but-
shrink the amount of animals, because I don't like factory.
methodology, bro. I need to know the methodology before I see the abstract.
Do what?
I need to know the methodology before I see the abstract.
I mean, we can look it up if you want to. You can pull it up. I was printing out stuff.
See, okay, diets are healthy, nutritionally and adequate. See, this is arbitrary language. Healthy, how are they defining health? Or healthful is what it says. How are we defining healthful? Are we qualifying it based off a metabolic blood panel and actual numbers?
It's the biggest board of nutrition and dietetics. So
Okay, but I'm asking, listen, that's an appeal to authority, which I don't care for. I care to actually get to the science and for us to define what we know.
Well, yeah,
for
I'm
the sake
not
of this
making
argument.
I didn't bring the full article because I didn't want us to go through a full. I just brought it so
but
like you
having-
could have it and you can look through it
Yeah.
if you'd like to.
Yeah, having
but-
the methodology would be good more than anything. But ultimately, what I'm seeing right now is the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics that appropriately planned vegetarian, including vegan diets, are healthful, nutritionally adequate, and may provide health benefits for the prevention and treatment of certain diseases. You agree with that statement?
Yes.
Right. So they're healthful. We don't know what healthful means. That's why I need to know the methodology. I need to know how they're defining that.
We can just think of it in a general sense.
Nutritionally, see, but
Healthy.
good. It's just good. Like these are circular arguments that we can't have a true
I
debate
mean, but
on.
yeah, I just don't think we should get into the specifics of little words like healthy, like we know what healthy means.
Should we get into little words like good and bad or evil?
No. I mean,
So,
good and
God.
bad. Good
so
and
I guess
bad.
we shouldn't define good and bad then.
I mean, I don't think we need to. I said unnecessary. I wouldn't say good and bad.
So unnecessary, the necessity of saying it's unnecessary, that's where there isn't enough jurisprudence on your end to define the correlation between the necessity and the actual moral ought. You're saying you should not do this thing. You should not eat meat, correct? Because it's unnecessary. How are you correlating the necessity with the moral claim?
Because I can tell that we can live and thrive off of a vegan diet.
So because I can tell that we can live and thrive off a vegan diet. Okay.
It is
I'm okay with
known.
that.
It's
If that's the
known.
argument.
Yeah, it's been known for centuries that we can do this.
Okay, if that's the argument. So nutritionally adequate. I think that's important that they worded it that way. And that's where your argument stems from. If you have enough adequate nutrients, if you have enough of an adequate nutritional profile, you won't die and you won't necessarily get obese and you can have a fairly adequate standard of living, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the question for me to you is there a line we're drawing whenever we're thinking about the adequacy? Do you accept that eating meat is potentially more nutritionally fruitful than eating just plants?
No, because there's
So the adequacy is
also
the thing.
There's also studies that show that there's no difference in markers like health markers. I haven't gone too deep into
Show me.
those.
You've got to show me these studies, because every study you're going to show me, the abstract is going to qualify red meat with lasagna, with pizza, with ham and cheese sandwiches. So when the studies you're going to reference, guarantee, just bring it up to me. I have no problem confidently right now making the claim that if you can give me a study that tries to say veganism or plants are more nutritionally dense than animal proteins, namely for the specific essential nutrients that humans need. I'm not even talking about what cows need, but for what humans need. If that's the case, if you want to make that claim, I need to know what exactly that study is and what the abstract is in tandem with the methodology.
Yeah, I just want to remember to do that
Yeah,
later.
yeah, because the
Also-
methodology is going to be the biggest thing.
Sorry to interrupt, guys, but let's
Yeah.
make sure we're not straying, because we're straying into each other's camera.
So I need to stay more this way?
Yeah, you need to stay
Okay,
that
solid.
way,
Say less.
and you need to come towards me.
Okay, solid. Say less. So just to redefine that,
No,
If-
I got you. Send you a study on yeah, no, I did
on
forget.
plants being more nutritionally dense than
Yeah,
animals.
I have. I remember I saw one that said that there was no difference in the.
But what was the
nutritional markers.
methodology of that one you saw? Do you know?
I honestly
That's
don't know.
the problem, bro. Like if they say lasagna's red meat and they say a vegan diet's more nutritionally dense than this diet that has red meat,
Yeah,
of
but-
course certain foods are gonna be better than trash, poor methodological considered studies
Yeah,
or
but
sources.
again, like my stance doesn't come from anything scientific more than like it doesn't matter about the health and things like that. It's just that it's unnecessary.
So yours is unnecessary because of the modern, right?
yes,
Okay.
because we can thrive off of a plant-based diet.
Okay. So before that, though, I just need to know: are you going to confirm, or are you willing to concede that, even if it's just for the sake of this argument, that eating foods that have the essential nutrients that humans need is a better, more optimal diet than eating foods that are devoid, or eating a dietary system that is devoid of those nutrients?
No, I mean you can look all over. There's athletes there's vegan
Anecdotes,
strongmen.
bro.
There's
That's okay.
vegan
I didn't know
strongmen.
this.
I mean, there's vegan
didn't know this.
bodybuilders. I mean, you can do anything
Okay.
that any meat eater does on a vegan diet, I believe.
I got a question though. When you guys were discussing the kids having deficiencies and we're talking about a lot of studies here, which we know are tend
We
to
haven't
be.
even looked at any studies, because if we
Yeah.
look at a study, I need to go to the methodology to see how we're defining how that study was conducted. I need to see the p-value to see the
Right.
significance of that.
I
study.
honestly
What's written
didn't think
down
we
here?
would have the time to get into things like that specific.
Well, I wish I
well,
clarified that. We
But
have
hold
plenty
on.
of time.
But we also
I mean,
know
it's
too
Super
that
Bowl
these studies
today,
can be
yeah.
flawed as well, right? Depending on which
That's
who's
where-
funding these studies.
It's the methodology. It's how they defined red meat.
Right.
Like you
Oh.
said, they're eating pizza and just
Yeah.
eating crap.
There hasn't
So,
been one.
Of course, there's going to be bad.
There hasn't been one study done that said I'm gonna eat ground beef and steak versus somebody eating a vegan diet. Insert however you think it's optimally, including add in all those supplements if you want. The supplements you would need from the essentialism that you can't get from plants. If we're including that, there has not been one study done comparing those two. So it's disingenuous to
Even
even
in
make the claim. Even for mine.
2026, they haven't done.
Isn't that wild?
I mean, come on, we could probably find one out there.
Google it.
Adriana?
So that's going to be just the first thing.
Hey, but hold on. Go back to my question here.
Go ahead.
You
What was the
guys are
question?
kind of talking over me. The blood work on the children. All right. How much, for how many, through a kid's life, how many times do they get blood work to even show those deficiencies?
So again, that's why I
So
think
is
it's
that even a study that can be used on your part
no.
or your
That's
part?
why when he was saying how many studies we have where a kid is growing up vegan and is sick and dying, essentially, it's like, well, we can't put a kid in a vegan ward, but what we
Well, I
can
just
do,
thought maybe you did have one because you were making that claim pretty sternly. Like
making that
you're telling me that it's immoral to raise my
Yeah.
kid vegan because they're not gonna
I'm
grow
no,
up right.
no. I did not make that claim. We can run the tape back. My claim was, why are we not, or is there a moral? Do we consider proper human development morally protected? Yes or no?
Yes.
So just to restate the claim, you agree that proper human nourishment and proper human development is morally protected, right?
Yes.
Okay. If we can prove, and this is where my claim comes from, if we can prove that eating a vegan diet is, which you've already agreed that it's suboptimal because it requires supplementation. So a vegan diet without supplementation or a vegan diet with supplementation. Those are two different combos. But let's just say a vegan diet, if we can prove that it by itself, without the supplementation, is causing a deficiency of certain essential nutrients that humans need for proper development and growth, is that less morally acceptable than them eating animals if the eating of animals provides more nutritional development?
Yeah, I think it would be if it caused more development.
Okay,
but,
so only my, and I don't mean to keep interrupting you, bro, but my claim of that you interpreted it as me saying you're unethical for raising your kid vegan, my claim was it is a fact that a vegan diet cannot provide certain essential nutrients that humans need for proper development. And as a result, if another system of eating does provide that, wouldn't the argument then mean that the system that does provide better development for human beings is more morally acceptable?
When you say better, that's where I disagree, because we don't have to. I don't care to be the biggest, the strong. I don't care. I care to be just adequate. Adequate is fine.
And hold on, and I need to know why it's better too, because you're saying that we're not conducting studies on
Right.
this, though, right?
So
how do we know?
I also
how do we
don't
know
think
one
that
is
that's
better
true.
than the
So
other?
the better comes from, and trust me, I appreciate any caveats you want to throw in, because that's the whole point, is for you as the audience member to almost be like, wait, where are these arguments coming from? When I say better, I'm saying you need certain nutrients in order to develop properly, and if you're not getting them, that's worse. That's what I mean by better.
Okay.
So if you're on a vegan diet and you're not getting vitamin B12, zinc, heme iron, choline, L-carnitine, taurine, all these different nutrients, if you're not getting them, that's worse than getting them for proper human development. I'm making that claim.
Okay. Yeah, it might be better, but I just don't think that it's
So you've
necessary.
conceded that it's better, though.
I don't think that it's better, but
You just said I just think it's better. Now you
no,
you
I
don't
said
think it's better.
it might be better. I don't know enough,
Okay.
but I don't think that it's necessary for humans to live fruitful lives, and we don't have to. I just don't think
So
that,
necessary. You're equating.
Watch that though.
It doesn't have to be.
You're
it
equating
might be
necessity
better,
with moral
but
view, though. You're equating necessity with moral obligation.
because there's a victim behind.
Right, and there's a victim behind a vegan child being underdeveloped.
I mean, but I
click
just
on
don't think
that
that
one,
that's a thing.
So, okay, so you don't think? Do you want to?
There's
We've
plenty
got a
of-
couple of studies up here if you guys
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to comb through them. We got, go to the top real quick. National Institute of Health. They've got some studies on plant-based diets. I don't know if you got like kind of.
And
that
I
stuff
I
at the
honestly
very
would too
bottom.
assert just that like if for instance we live 5 years longer if we eat animals versus plants, we might live 5 years
I don't look at it
shorter.
as lifespan. I'm looking at life quality.
I'm just saying that if that were the case, even a decade, if I was going to be 80 eating meat, but I'm only 70 eating plants, I still don't think that 10-year difference is
Okay.
a justification to cause the amount of harm that we do.
Because of your moral ought being claimed that I should not eat food, I should not eat meat because it's causing unnecessary suffering.
Yes.
But again, that ought, that you have to, because of the unnecessary suffering, because of the necessity, the necessary aspect of it. My brain is not understanding how you're jumping to those correlations. I don't understand how you're making that jump. The only way you could make that jump is by defining where you get your morals from.
I mean, to me, like, I don't know how I
Preference.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know how I like started really on this journey of becoming vegan, but I mean, when you said that there like a religious thing to it, I feel like there is a bit of just a spiritual, and just like my own experiences have made me think that like this is the right way. I mean,
But that's preference. You keep saying my own experiences.
Yeah.
My, I, me.
Yeah.
What makes me obligated to follow what you do?
just because I just think that it's unnecessary, and we shouldn't cause unnecessary harm.
I don't. You were literally going in circles because you are unable to define where you get your morals from, which makes this jump and this leap into necessity and morality. And that leap, I'm saying, you can't do without a true epistemological justification, without you truly defining how you're making that leap. Because you saying, well, I feel like it's wrong because these animals are suffering and they're victims. I could then just make the same claim. Well, I think it's wrong that vegan kids are being underdeveloped, namely in their neurology, namely in their physiological development, because they're devoid of certain nutrients you can only get from animals.
But that's still a claim that has yet to be proven. It's a fact that the animals are dying.
It's a fact that humans need certain essential nutrients.
But the vegans have been
Adequately. Adequate isn't what I'm not saying vegans can't live and not die by avoiding animals. Of course you can live and not die by avoiding animals. But are you getting proper nourishment of the human anatomy, namely when children are developing in their most pertinent developmental stages?
I think there's many cases of that, yes.
Completely devoid of the nutrients, or with the supplementation?
Completely devoid of the
So
nutrients.
that's a claim. That's a claim you're making then that you've got to substantiate.
I mean, there has to have been times in history where people have not been able to eat meat, for one. But I mean, I don't have a study on that, but people have been around for.
No, continue.
Okay.
I was going to hop in right after
But
that.
I mean, I also, but now in today's day is the real crux of my
modern,
argument. Because
but
we can supplement it.
But that goes back to you necessitating this moral obligation. You necessitating by saying it's unnecessary. That's you necessitating it. You're saying it's unnecessary. I don't think it's unnecessary to farm animals. So what makes our disconnect of that necessitation?
Well, could you live without doing it?
Could you live without eating plants?
No, you have to eat something.
See, that's a whole other argument.
But
I said that's a claim you got to make.
Could you live without
substantiate.
eating the animals?
You couldn't live adequately, or you could only live adequately. You couldn't live optimally.
So yeah, you could yourself.
Could you live? Okay. So I answered. Could you live without plants?
Yeah, I don't think you did answer.
So that no. I said yes. You can live inadequately, suboptimally.
But you just said adequately.
Inadequately and suboptimally compared to the animals. That's what I'm saying.
Suboptimally, maybe, but even if that's the case, I just don't think that's a justification for the unnecessary harm.
Okay. So now let me ask you: can you live without eating plants?
You could. Oh yes, you could live without eating plants.
Okay, so then we're on
eating animals.
Yeah, if you're only eating animals,
I gotcha.
If you're only eating animals,
I thought you were
can you live
saying
without
like
plants?
not
No.
eating,
Can you only live
anything.
without? Can you live only eating animals?
Yes.
Okay, and I agree. You can live only eating plants. The question now becomes, which one is more optimal?
No, I think the question becomes
for human development. If we've already agreed that the morality of human development is protected.
Yeah, I just don't think that we don't develop correctly on a vegan diet. You might say that we develop more optimally, like we grow bigger, or I don't know what you're saying there, how more optimal, but,
I think I know where you're coming from.
We can live and survive and thrive on a plant-based diet.
So I agree. The human anatomy will develop normally. We'll just even say adequately if you give it only a vegan diet that's devoid of all the nutrients you get from animals. I do not make the claim that a human cannot grow up into a fully fledged human by not eating meat. That's not my claim. My claim is, what are the indirect consequences of not having certain essential nutrients in the body during that development?
Okay, so whenever you talk about anatomy, though, like, do you believe? Sorry to not really answer your question, but do you believe, based on our anatomy, that we should be eating meat?
It's not that I believe Yes, I do believe that we need to eat meat because our anatomy has evolved and adapted to do so as apex predators. We can talk about are you familiar with the appendix and how it's essentially a vestigial organ and we don't use it? Are you familiar with this?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do you know why we don't? Do you even know why do we have the appendix?
I actually don't know.
So the cecum, when you have your intestines, if you look at herbivorous animals versus carnivorous animals versus omnivorous animals, there's a difference in the colon's development. When I talk about human digestive or the human digestive tract and the human digestive system, it is not just humans, it's any animal that has a similar adaptation to the development of their digestive tract. Omnivores and carnivores, but really more on the carnivore side, have less of a long cecum. So when you have your colon, just to give you a general anatomy lesson, you got your mouth that goes into your esophagus. Esophagus connects down into your stomach. Stomach connects into your small intestine. It's the upper part known as your duodenum. Your duodenum connects then into your ileum, which wraps underneath your colon, or it connects to your jejunum. You ever seen Semi-Pro?
Mm-mm.
Darn, I always want to make that reference.
Will Ferrell?
Yeah, I always want to make that reference.
Here, don't put that up too high. It's going to be in my shot.
Okay, solid.
No, you're good.
It ain't in your shot, bro. The jejunum goes into the ileum, so there's three parts of the small intestine. That ileum then connects into the colon. So your colon kind of looks like this question mark. In fact, Adriana, can you pull up a picture of the human digestive tract? And if anything, if you pull up herbivore versus carnivore digestive system, if you put that in, we'll be able to really visually see it.
Mm-hmm. The carnivore's a lot shorter.
Way shorter, because the cecum, the initial part of the colon, is the area for all animals in which fiber is processed. So most herbivores are not eating carbs as their main form of energy, meaning they're not going through a process called glycolysis, which is turning carbs into energy. They're undergoing a similar fat burning pathway that humans and other carnivores are undergoing because the fiber they're eating gets broken down in that cecum and gets turned into a saturated fat. And that saturated fat from the fiber is what they use as energy, which is why gorillas, cows, koala bears, they have to eat all day because they have to constantly break down this fiber to get energy from it. Does that kind of make sense? So when you look at the colon of the animal differences, you've got to see that the cecum is so much longer for herbivores. When you see the human digestive tract, that cecum, it's not only shorter, kind of like a lot of carnivores, but it's evidenced based off of that appendix that the long aspect of that cecum that wasn't used got residually sucked up and turned into this small little frivoled, shrinked up version of what the cecum used to be that turned into the appendix. So the appendix, if we were to blow it up, it's evidence that we used to have a digestive tract that was more conducive for processing fiber, for eating plants, for eating vegetables. But over time, as carnivorous animals, as apex predators, we stop eating plants. So this is what anthropologists think. It caused our cecum to slowly shrink and shrivel because we stopped using it until it became that vestigial appendix. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
So when you look at human anatomy, this is the perfect example. Yeah, that one will be perfect. That one's perfect. So notice here, back up a little bit. Notice that cecum, where it says cecum.
Yeah.
See how small it is? Now look at the one on the right, the rabbit. See how long it is, how large it is?
And what was the purpose of that part again?
The cecum is what processes fiber and all the plant material that herbivores eat. Does that kind of make sense? So the cecum, what it's allowing is herbivorous animals to actually process the fiber. Simple as that.
Okay.
So when you look at human anatomy, we don't have the ability to process the fiber. Why? That's the ultimate question we have to ask. So when we look at human anatomy, how are we designed to operate energetically? And what foods were we designed to eat to get that energy? That's the ultimate question that I operate
Nowadays, it might be that we're...
Not nowadays.
Oh.
In our evolutionary adaptation. So if our anatomy right now, you cut me open and you see the way my body's designed, if it's been that same for 100,000 years, then we can assume that we have evolved to eat a certain way.
I honestly wouldn't know about 100,000 years ago, but I mean, that would just bring me to a whole nother area of just like what makes sense for the survival of humans. I mean, and that kind of does bring me to like a spiritual kind of thing, because I mean, do you believe in a creator? Can I ask you that? Like,
yeah, I believe in a higher power. From a secular perspective, I think I could tell people I believe in a higher power.
So like, I mean, you believe that someone created the world that we're living in?
You said someone. I don't believe it was a physical being.
Yeah, not like a specific person, but there's like
I believe that there was an initial creator and to cause all of this creation.
Okay, so then.
But I think the argument can be hinged without that.
Okay, but so then, just to me, like my own thinking, it doesn't. So, for instance, would you feel trauma killing an animal if you had to kill your meat every day, like especially like from growing up as a kid?
Because of how
can you understand how that would be traumatic for an individual?
100%. But do you understand the necessity of that for humans in our development since we've been anatomically modern?
Well, I'm just coming at this from a creator's standpoint.
Not because then from a creator standpoint, now we're having to define the moral grounds from which certain things are allowed and certain things aren't. And I do think there's a difference between human sentience versus animal sentience.
Yes, I agree.
Can I weigh in on that? Just because I have killed an animal, because I hunt. But I get what you're saying on that. I think there is a bit of, I guess you would say, trauma, but like, I don't think it's what you think it is.
I think it's more now because we're so removed from it that if I were to kill an animal now, it would be way more traumatic than if I had killed one 100 years ago.
I think less so because it's so normalized today.
Okay, well, I think if I went killed it though, I haven't killed it, so I don't know what that's like. I think it'd be more traumatic for me. I'm thinking right now, if I had to go shoot a cow in the head, that would be mad traumatic than me knowing that it's just dying on the back end, which is the whole point of it. But if it was 100 years ago and I had to go kill my own cow, I think I wouldn't be anywhere near as traumatized because it was normalized through my upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
I can see where you're coming from.
There's also other things too that come into play of killing an animal as well. It's not just the fact of like you're taking its life, but you're also receiving something from it as well.
So if it's scared and stuff before it dies, all that's a whole nother combo for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, but I guess it's different in a sense of having a cow that's kind of on your own land and compared to a deer that's out in the wild. Ethical
farming for cattle is a whole nother combo that I guarantee we agree 100% on. The ethicality of how an animal is killed.
Yeah.
I get all the slaughter videos you posted on Instagram. A lot of this came from, he was posting stuff on Instagram of this messed up cows or animals getting slaughtered, which that is a real thing. Yeah. And I want you to know, I agree with you that it is mad unnecessary to be unethical in how you kill the animals. And I think there is a moral necessity, and it goes to the physiology and stuff. Like if you kill a cow or if you kill an animal when it's scared, it's going to permeate the meat differently than if you killed it without it being aware of it. So I do think there's an ethicality to how you would kill an animal. Yeah. But the ethics of the actual killing is a part of it.
So let me ask this, and let me get through my whole conversation here. So when you kill an animal, like just to put this out here, would you be okay with like meeting like a middle ground and like going back to the garden conversation that got brought up? If everybody had a garden in their backyard, that would take away from factory farming, which would be more ethical, right? So what if we also went back to raising our own animals and hunting our own animals? Would that be more ethical as well?
It's hard to say because I think that would still be more ethical, but it's still just unnecessary.
You're still inflicting harm.
Yeah. Well, see, then we go back to the necessity and the morality, which is a part of the argument.
Hold on.
Yeah.
And then
I got to call that out, though.
No, I get that, but hold on. Let me get through my point. And then also when we discussed the whole plants, you're saying they don't have consciousness, right? They don't communicate with one another, so it's okay if that we eat plants.
I mean, they communicate chemically, but not like.
He doesn't qualify their sentience.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, he doesn't think they're
and back
sentient.
to your last point, that would to me, like, I think that's better, but it's just like one of those arguments like, I won't beat my wife every week. I'll beat her, or I'll just slap her now instead of punching her. You know, it's better, but it's still unnecessary.
You're correlating
harm.
now.
Okay. I'm not. You know, I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to make an analogy.
An easy analogy for sure.
But like, yeah, it's better. But like, it's.
I'm just trying to find a middle ground here.
Yeah. Well, I think the middle ground is this. This is from my understanding. The middle ground is unless we can truly qualify where we're getting our moral grounds to say unethical, to use the word unethical, unless we have a true moral defining of where you're justifying that, we're going to keep talking in circles. And if ultimately your stance is, I preference because of my experience and I don't like animals getting harmed, unless that is the line in which you're willing to stop the obligation for then me or Gabe or anybody else to have to then not do that thing, we're not going to be able to get anywhere because we don't have the true grounds to define what you mean by ethical, what you mean by necessary, let alone when you make the jump from necessity to then that ethical obligation. That's where I'm coming from.
It's not, I don't think what I want or what I think from my own experience. It's just, again, necessary. I can live. I can do everything that I would do on a meat diet, on a plant diet.
No, you can't. You can't get L-carnitine. You can't get vitamin B12. You can't get any of those things.
Not maybe like what I'm intaking, but the life that I'm living, like my day-to-day life, I can do everything the exact same.
You can now because you developed having a lot of those nutrients in your body, in your brain, in your development to give you a solid foothold as an adult to make that decision. But if we're talking about the moral protection, which you agreed earlier, and just correct me if I'm wrong, let's restate it just to make sure. Do you believe proper human nourishment and development is morally protected?
Yes.
Okay. So if that's the case, if we are not properly developing and nourishing children, then you could say there is a immorality to it. Correct? Just if that were the case.
Yes, but but again, I don't think that's the case.
So, but you concede if there is the lack of certain essential nutrients for children in their development, that is immoral compared to just giving them those nutrients.
Yeah, that lost me. I'm sorry.
Okay. Do you agree, yes or no? If I give a kid certain nutrients that will propagate better development, that is morally superior than giving a kid a system of eating that is devoid of those nutrients.
As long as this second one is adequate, I don't think and this one has a victim, I don't think that that's...
Okay, so now we've got to define the adequacy. That's going to be, I guess, where the entire argument hinges. And because you and I don't have the scientific justification to define the adequacy, I pretty much think that's where the conversation has to almost like be pinpointed.
At least that section of it.
At least that section for sure. Yeah. Because why though? Because you're not willing to concede the indirect consequences of B12 deficiency. You're not willing to concede the indirect consequences of L-carnitine deficiency, taurine, and all the other essential nutrients you can only get from animals. And in the inability to concede that, you will always have a moral equality of, well, as long as it's adequate, then I don't see it being a problem. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm
So-
sorry. I feel like we did cut you off.
No,
before
so
you were
if
done.
that study was to come out, like what he said earlier, he said, well, if I only live 70 years and you live 80, then what's the issue?
The issue isn't in the latter years of 70 to 80 when you're dying. It's in the early years of the innocent child in their development being inadequately developed.
But do we have studies on that? That's what I'm asking.
I don't think we could ever get studies on that. I don't think we could ever get studies truly on putting somebody in a vegan ward in their. Let's put a
Right, I get
13-year-old
what
in a
you mean,
vegan ward,
yeah.
another 13-year-old in
Or
a
a baby
carnivore ward,
raised
or a
in-
baby
yeah.
and raise them. There's no ethical studies that can be done on that front. So there are certain questions on that merit that we have to qualify based off the mechanisms, which is why the mechanism I'm qualifying is what? The essential nutrients that are devoid from a vegan diet. That's where my mechanistic argument comes from. Because if we get into the studies, we're going to be talking in circles because there are no studies that can be done on certain human trials.
But I think what's causing this whole division between vegan and carnivore is the fact of factory farming. I think that's what's causing the division, right?
Yeah, but
Because
I mean,
if-
it's necessary to feed the supply nowadays.
Exactly.
So like, there's no way around it.
Right. But
Not,
there could-
not
it could be
everyone
more
can
ethical.
regenerative
Agreed.
farm.
If there is a middle ground of, well, you can't avoid killing animals nowadays, so how do we mitigate the unnecessary harm? I don't know if going vegan solves that. And in fact, that's my claim is I don't think vegan solves that.
No, but it's just like everything. There's going to be multiple different factors that are come to play to solve that, because not only do you have, like you said, to feed the entire population of the world, but how much are we over consuming?
Right.
How many people are obese? You know what I mean? So if we attack that, if we attacked like these factory farms being more ethical and maybe doing like pasture raised, just stop being more mindful, or maybe even, in my mind, splitting up your diet more, maybe not going full carnivore or full vegan, combining the two, so that way you cut the ratios down. You know what I mean? Like maybe that could bring us in the middle for common ground here.
I am kind of an absolutist. Like I don't really like terms like ethical farming. I mean, like humane slaughter. Like there's no humane, but humane means benevolence, compassion. There's no benevolent way to kill something that doesn't want to die or doesn't need to die for you to survive.
But in the
I
wild,
do
though,
just wanna
that
say
animal is going to die at some point, whether it be hit by a car, eaten by a coyote or a wolf or whatever it may be, or just, the population gets too big and they end up spreading disease between one another.
I agree that there's this like that, but there's nothing you can do about like.
So
there's
the
nothing,
unnecessary part.
Yeah,
of those,
there's like people like to say a lot of times like, what about stuff that's going on in Gaza and stuff, and I get all that. There's bad things that happen. Bad stuff's going to happen anyway.
Right.
Things are going to die. But this is something that you can directly affect. Like I can't go and do anything for the deer that's going to get hit by the truck.
No, but you also can't. But you eating plants and potentially causing malnourishment to the next generation doesn't change the fact that animals are still getting slaughtered.
I mean, that's a pretty bold potential to claim because people.
I thought that's what you just claimed. I thought you said we're so engrossed in like killing animals and everybody's dependent on it now that there is no way to really avoid it.
I mean, through factory farming, we need that because of how much meat people are eating. That's what I was saying.
Right. So if we're accepting that we need that because of how much meat people are eating, if that is just something we're accepting right now, and now we're going back to the moral obligation of human development, if we can't get rid of the animal farming, is it more immoral to only feed plants if they're devoid of all those nutrients? That's just what my argument's going to keep.
I mean, I was saying we need that just because of the supply and what people are used to. We don't need that nutritionally. We could, if all factory farming ended tomorrow, like yes, it would be a logistical nightmare. But as far as people starving, that wouldn't be a thing.
Adriano, can you pull up plant nutritional deficiency? Can you pull up? How would you word it? Vegan diet necessary supplementation study. Pull that up. See what that says.
And I have a quick question: is vegan including eggs and fish, or no?
No.
Because I always thought vegan was eggs and fish.
I thought
too.
vegetarian.
Yeah, no,
was
we
that.
don't. Yeah, we don't.
Oh, vegetarian is eggs and
they
fish?
eat eggs and fish.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is kind of a good question. I've always wanted to ask this to a vegan. Why are eggs out of the question?
I mean, just because of the exploitation part. I mean, for instance,
so
like
the conditions that they live in.
not just the conditions. Yeah, I mean, even free range, they're just not in cages, but they're packed in in sheds that they don't have anywhere but like a 10 inch by 10 inch.
Right, and I agree with that too.
Square to walk.
But is it okay that I have a chicken coop in the backyard with 6 chickens at free range right now that are currently out?
I mean, yeah, I don't judge people again. Like I don't like
No,
to
I'm
be
not
this
saying you
guy
do
because
at all.
I was eating meat just 6 years ago. So I mean, no, I don't necessarily agree with that. But
I just asked because chickens will lay eggs regardless.
Yes.
They don't need a rooster in order to lay eggs. So
Yeah.
so should we just let those eggs just rot and go back into the soil?
To me, like even an unfertilized egg, it's like a chicken, period. And I just don't understand why we think that we need this food. This brings me back to like
We need the food because of what it says. Go back to the top where it says necessary food.
The spiritual thing, like the creator thing. It doesn't make sense to me that they would give us food that causes trauma to us. Like for instance, we were talking about killing animals. It doesn't make sense that we would have to give ourselves trauma in our preparation of our food.
So you're saying we get trauma from killing the animal?
Yes, just like you said, you would be
if I
trauma,
did right now, yeah. But that's because of the modernity aspect
I'm
of
sorry.
it. It's because of how modern it is. That's
I know,
my thing.
but I get what he's saying on that because there is a small portion of that.
Agreed.
On
Taking
anything.
a life, yeah.
But I think we need to discuss like kind of percentages here on that because like when I kill a deer, yes, you feel a sense of in a small sense of sadness that the animal died, but what comes from that animal outweighs that.
And what comes from that? The proper nourishment of the human development, which is the moral claim that you agreed with.
But not only nourishment too, it's that you are in the position where you are actually, I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah,
but control, but also you're the one that's doing it, so
Right.
you're responsible for it. You butcher the animal, you pack the meat, you give it to your family. I don't know how to explain that.
bear
I
the
agree,
moral
it's
weight of
more
the
respectable.
guilt,
Yeah,
100%.
and
but
so,
still not acceptable, right?
Yes.
Right, but still not acceptable.
Yes.
It's more ethical, but it's still not acceptable in your worldview, right?
Yes, because you still, like you said earlier, what are you getting from that? The proper nutrition. I still don't think that that's 100% true because it's not necessary.
Well, then we can just agree.
That's not the necessary nutrition. But again, like, would you think that
Go to the top, brother.
back to the creator thing? Would you think that the creator would make our food plants and vegetables? We just eat them. There's no issues with us. We don't get the trauma from it. Or did you think that they want us to have the animals here to eat the stuff and have a middleman and give us trauma and cause death and suffering and eat up forests and cut? Do you think that makes sense in your mind?
Yeah, to me it makes sense that we would be tasked.
Do you get what I'm asking there?
sort of.
If you want to restate it, do you want to say it again, or you can steel man it?
So like back to the creator thing. Do you think if like they're all knowing, they're like they wouldn't make any mistakes? Do you think that it makes sense for them to give us food through the form of animals? That's a middleman. We have to.
Yeah, but isn't that like
becomes a
causes
argument that
causes
against a
us
whole
trauma,
nother-
or do you think it makes more sense for it to be?
Because are
just
you saying that our
plants and
creator's
seeds?
supposed to be perfect and not supposed to cause harm? Is that what you're saying?
I don't necessarily say not cause harm. I'm just saying that.
Because don't we look at that like in God in a sense of like some people who don't understand the Bible and don't understand what happened throughout that time period, they look almost as if using that argument of like, why would God create something that you have to kill? But hasn't that been
So in the Bible, that's the thing though.
debated?
The whole point is
Didn't he cause the flood? I mean,
if we're going to make the epistemological argument, meaning if we're going to say, how do we know what we know? If you're going to say, wouldn't it make sense that a God would? We're now arguing in the domain of a specific God you're referencing. And if we're talking about the Christian God, I can give you, if we're arguing from that claim, the evidence substantiating why it is okay and why he would make meat and all the stuff you're talking about. Why would a God...
We can go into that because I know a little bit about that.
could you
So
explain it
so
I
why
understand as well?
why would a God make these animals for humans to kill, to cause them to suffer for our flourishment? Well, that's exactly it. Humans are separate from these animals. We are God-like in our comparison to these animal creatures. So in the Bible, we can talk about all throughout Genesis. I think it'd be good to get Adrian to throw some scripture here where it'll say, especially in the beginning of Genesis, God gave us all the vegetables and we didn't eat any animals and we pretty much were just chilling with the natural stuff that was there. But after the fall of man, after we bit from the forbidden fruit and became fallen creatures, all of the creatures on earth were under our domain. Every single animal and plant is under our acceptance of you can have and you can eat that thing. That's just in the Bible.
It says that we have dominion over them.
Has dominion over them, literally. So in Genesis, in the first part though, and this
What
is
does
the
that
first
mean?
part,
You have dominion over?
you're in control. You decide what to do with them.
Yeah, but we have dominion over our children. Are we eating them? I mean, we're nurturing them.
That's a leap. First off, if we're going to use the word dominion, do you know the actual Greek etymology from which the word dominion was used when it was transliterated? No, neither do I really. But at the end of the day, if we're going to keep this surface level, if we're going to say we're arguing now from a biblical worldview, there has to be certain acceptances within that if we're arguing from it. If we're not, if you're going to jump out of the biblical worldview, give secular perspectives, and then jump back in, we're going to have to go really back to how you define good and evil.
I would say that anyone that is really on the religious Christian topic should really, I haven't seen it myself, but I was watching some debates from the guy who made Christspiracy. His name is Cam Waters. It's a guy, he was a hunter like yourself, grew up super Christian, and he changed over, and he goes through all the
scripture on how it justifies.
And the Greek, he goes through the translations and stuff, and he actually shows how in Genesis they talk about how the fall of man was from the slaughter of animals, and he breaks down how violence was broken down from 3 different words. I don't remember exactly what they were, but if you are into that, I'd suggest that you go back and watch that.
My thing is, well, the problem is you're jumping ship to different moral grounds to make an argument. We're not going to argue Christian ethics.
No, that was just for the people that
but even then,
is important to them.
But here's the problem. If we're going to argue Christian ethics, that is a whole other debate. I have a guy that won't eat red meat because he thinks that Old Testament scripture overrides New Testament freedom of certain dietary restrictions. We would have to get into a whole exegesis debate, which I don't even know really if you would be prepared to have that. Not saying I'd be fully prepared, but if you
I wouldn't.
Right.
That's why I pointed out the Christspiracy, because I don't know enough.
This is also why this is why I don't want to have the debate with the Christian ethics. I want to have the debate of, let's just say, how you're defining morality and ethicality, and from your definitions, we can operate from there. That's what I've been trying to do.
I agree. I just wanted to throw that out there because I think that is good information, because it is a good topic for Christians for sure.
It's a good topic for okay.
So what were they living off of in the Old Testament then?
So all of the dietary restrictions that Jews adhere to, Judaism adheres to, is essentially the justification from which a lot of Christians will qualify their own dietary restrictions. But they're ignoring specific aspects of Christian scripture in the New Testament that essentially overrides all of those old rules.
But was it a plant-based diet? That's what I'm
No,
asking.
there were still animals. It was a kosher diet.
And in the Garden of Eden, everyone was vegan. That's what I hear. In the Garden
of Eden,
that's kind of what I'm getting.
In the Garden of Eden, there wasn't death, so no one was really eating.
I suggest you do watch Christspiracy. It's very formal and very.
At the end of the day, if we're having an argument from the Christian worldview, that's a different debate, because now we have to go into scripture and how you're defining.
I get that side.
How
I
you're
understand
qualifying this guy's justification. That's a whole other argument.
The only reason I asked was because that kind of backs his argument with if it's prior to when that all changed, they were living their whole life off of a vegan diet. Right?
If humans in the Garden of Eden were
that's all.
The fall of man comes from.
Okay, so where was the Garden of Eden then before the fall of man?
I don't know. That's what we're
asking. So that's the whole point, bro. We can't. You're right. If he were to bastardize scripture in a way to make it retrofit his argument, he would be right, 100%. But he's not operating from scripture as his moral basis.
Let's just say he is.
If he is, then now, okay, but it would be another 2-hour debate, because now I have to talk about where is the Garden of Eden? What does it mean to eat in the Garden of Eden? What does it mean to have dominion over only plants versus after the fall having dominion over all creatures on earth? We have to get into that argument. Right. Do you want to spend an hour and a half doing that? No, I really don't.
But I'm saying it's something to look at.
No doubt. Not only is it something worth looking at, you need to qualify.
I'm saying this for the people who are watching.
I'll tell you this, for the people watching, qualify that based off of whether or not you're actually in tune with the Christian worldview to begin with.
Right.
Because you can't even have that argument if you don't know how God's defining right or wrong.
Or if you don't believe.
Or if you don't believe, Because if you don't believe, you don't know how God's defining right or wrong. You don't know how or what the context in which Scripture is prescribing certain ideas. So you're not in a position that is equipped enough to actually have the argument from the Old, let alone the New Testament. That's why I didn't want to bring Christian moral values into this. Yeah.
But I have a question
think that
too.
Is important though too.
It's worth exploring for sure.
And my big thing here is trying to get people to look into it. If one person looks into it, and I'll think this is a success. So if I need to bring that into just to get a couple more people interested, that I believe by scripture, from what I've seen from Cam Waters, that it is scripturally sound that in the Garden of Eden they were vegan, and the fall of man comes from the violence of man and greed, and specifically the slaughtering of animals.
Yes, I disagree on that wholeheartedly, but we'll kind of leave that where it's at. If we're going to go back to the original argument, I think ultimately, from both of our moral worldview, that if there is a system of eating that provides humans the adequate or the optimal, the designed, if we're going to say design just based off of adaptation, the nutrients that we need, and a different system is suboptimal to that, I think, and if we've already qualified that there is a moral obligation for proper human development, I think the maths that then it's immoral to eat a vegan diet if it's devoid of certain nutrients that children in particular need for the proper development of their brain and their body.
I mean, but yeah, you said that we've adapted too. Why can't we're always talking about how
Because
humans
how many
need
kids
to
are
evolve. We want to evolve. We want to grow. I mean, anatomically, we're going to grow too.
How
so
many
why
kids are
can't
going to
we?
suffer in that transition?
I mean, less than the animals.
How many kids? So you're not qualifying. Are you equating human life with animal life?
No. I think human life is more
Okay,
important.
then we're talking to
Yeah,
science.
but hold on. But
But
regardless,
I mean, yeah, that's still a. I mean, that's a theory.
Yeah.
Regardless of suffering or not, throughout history, there's been a period where people have had to suffer as they transitioned.
No doubt. No doubt. So the question is we're going back to the necessity, which I don't grant the.
Just to back what he's saying, he's
100%.
saying we could adapt, and
We
there is
could-
going to be
we could
probably a
adapt.
point of
We could
suffering,
adapt.
which
But is that
kind of goes
necessary?
against what you're trying to do is
Right.
cause less suffering.
Because
But
now
it could
it's going to
happen.
cause more suffering. My question is it? This goes back to yours, which
But I
again.
don't believe that it would cause more suffering.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Okay.
you know.
So just to make this.
Okay.
as-
Yeah. What's the level of suffering?
To make the exactly
Yeah.
where are we drawing the line, and why are we
As long-
disqualifying certain suffering and only qualifying other suffering?
Is deficiency
Well, as
suffering?
far
That's why I brought up insects at the very beginning. Anyway.
Yeah, well, as far as humans, my thing is as long as I can do the same exact things, like I can walk, I can run, I can.
So if a child, how about this? We'll do a hypothetical for the sake of seeing where your worldview is.
Okay.
If we could prove that a child on a vegan diet has a more than 50% chance of improper neurological development, meaning they have true neurological damage, and all of those other, just from B12 usually, but all of those other nutrients that are essential aren't being supplied to that child. If we could prove that there's a higher 50% chance that they're going to have a worse standard of living because they won't be as smart, they won't be as physically capable, they'll have a weaker immune system, which means they'll get sicker. If we could prove all that, would you then say that it is less moral to eat a vegan diet than a non-vegan diet?
Yes, I would, but
Okay,
but,
as long as you're willing to concede that.
But I mean, if we could fortify those things and get it so that in a vegan way that they could survive on that, I still think that eating the meat would be wrong.
I'm now making the claim that I don't think you can fortify any of those essential nutrients from animals without killing an animal.
Oh, you can't fortify those?
Not all of those essential nutrients, namely the ones I listed out for child development.
Okay, well, I'm just saying I don't know again specifically about those ones, but if we can get everything that we need to
be adequate.
to
Right.
be adequate
Yeah,
to
okay.
live
For
to
basic
live a
needs.
normal life.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll steel man yours. I'll be on your side. If there could be proven that a child raised with inadequate enough of a diet, let's just say vegan, even though we've both agreed that it is nutritionally inferior than the essential nutrients that humans need. But if we could prove that
I don't agree with that.
we've already talked about plants don't have those essential nutrients. So just by definition, if plants don't have those essential nutrients, then they're devoid of them. You need to supplement B12. You don't agree with that? You said way earlier.
Well, I was thinking. I'm sorry. Yeah, maybe B12, but I was thinking about the.
Okay, fine.
I don't know enough about.
Fine, we'll
the
just keep B12 then.
Okay.
If we can prove, and this is me steelmanning you, this is something I would be willing to adjust my worldview on.
Okay.
If we could prove that only supplementing B12 to a vegan child's diet can get them an adequate positioning where they don't have compared to the average human who would have otherwise all of those essential nutrients. If we can prove that they're pretty much 1-to-1 on par with them health-wise, I would have no problem conceding that a vegan diet is just fine for a child to undergo. I'd have no problem conceding that.
Okay. So then you're saying your main issue is with like the child development.
My main issue is with the moral protective standard, the morality of developing humans the right way, at least to a level of adequacy that I qualify, that I think that's where really we are separate on our definitions, but that's irrelevant. I just think that, yes, there is a level of adequacy that is being dismissed from a vegan diet that you can only get from eating plant or only from eating animals.
Particularly in adolescence and
Particularly in the most developmental stages, because children need more nutrients per gram of whatever resource they're getting in order to develop better, in order to develop properly. Humans, once you're set in your ways, which is why I said for you now, going to a vegan diet, I think is way more appropriate because you've already developed through all of the proteins you got and all the essential nutrients you got from your adolescence.
So, I mean, so at what age does that cut off? Like, so what's stopping you from being vegan now if you don't need any of the thing
if
develop?
If in this hypothetical, because I still believe, I'm not granting that the adequacy is enough. I still believe that there is an indirect health. Your health is being implicated indirectly when you don't have the essential nutrients that you can only get from animals. So even though it may be like only a 10-year difference, well, I only live to be 80, but you live to be 90 because you ate some meat. That to me is evidence of the insufficiency, the inadequacy of, or at least the unworthiness of avoiding animal proteins or animal meats.
I only made that argument, which I think it's actually the opposite. I mean, I think we can all agree that we've
No, we
all
can't.
we've all seen the vegan that's 110
What are the studies, bro?
years old.
That's an anecdote. What are the studies? The studies are vegans live longer under what conditions? However, they're defining in the methodology the red meat itself.
Wait, what?
You're saying there's evidence that vegans live longer and have better standard of quality of life, right? Isn't that what you just claimed?
Well, I believe that to be true. Yes.
So you just claimed that. Okay, so I'm not
Yes.
crazy for thinking that. My point is, you can't make that claim without any scientific justification because any studies you would reference are. I'm going back to what I said way earlier.
the
are
people
going
eating pizza and
are
stuff.
going to qualify this vegan lived longer compared to this meat eater, but that
Yeah.
meat eater was eating McDonald's and BS.
So hold on. So is there a study just on carnivore?
There aren't any current studies from my understanding, and really there may be some studies, but how are they substantiated based off how long they've been out and how many other studies have been conducted to substantiate that claim? There hasn't been, from my understanding, not even one long-term randomized control trial comparing veganism to a carnivore diet.
So then this is the issue, guys. There's not enough studies on both these topics, right?
And there's also not the ability to conduct certain studies on these topics, like putting a child in a vegan ward versus a meat ward.
But I do have a question on that when it comes to the children. Like, for instance, you'll see when a woman gets pregnant, she'll be low. A lot of the times I see iron. Where can you supplement iron from? If that have to be something from an
It's
animal?
high in foods, actually, legumes, beans.
But then,
leafy greens.
but then the question becomes the bioavailability, because we haven't even got to that part of the argument.
But are there some things that you can't? Like, I guess the ones you named.
Yeah, the
right?
ones I named, you cannot get at all from plants. You just can't.
So can you not live without B12?
You can't. That's his argument.
Because
His
B12
argument
is
is
just
yes.
like for energy,
I think
right?
you can, but just not healthily.
Stop.
Actually,
So
and
that's his argument.
just
His
with
argument.
the B12.
His argument is you can.
But just
not
explain what
healthily.
B12 is.
Dude, without going into
I'm just a
that's
casual.
gonna
Because
it's
when I think of
proper
B12, I think of
neurodevelopment.
trying to get energy. That's usually how they sell it.
neurodevelopment for children,
Yeah.
but generally speaking, your B vitamins, namely B12, is going to help with your energy stability. Simplest way to think about it. But ultimately, it's brain development. That's what you have to think about. That's why I'm going to the kid argument. Because if a kid is devoid in this, Adriana, if you want to look up a study, look up vitamin B12 deficiency in child development. There is proven neurological damage done when children are devoid of B12 in certain stages of their development. I don't know the ages, and I don't know where that cutoff line would be. But at the end of the day, let's just say until the human brain is fully developed, let's say 25 to 27, that age range. I think then you could have the argument of, all right, you're developed, eat some vegan plants if you think that that's going to be best for you going forward. In terms of the moral claim of human development being necessary and being morally protected.
Okay.
So that has been studied, though, right?
Has what been studied?
B12.
The B12, specifically
Yeah.
the deficiency that causes neurological disorders?
Yeah.
Yes, it has.
Because the only reason I ask is because I hear the comments made about vegans all the time as if they don't have enough energy or they have low drive or
go ahead and read this.
they tend to be tired all the time. So that's where that deficiency comes from, the B12. Okay.
Go ahead and read that, Gabe, if you want. I haven't read this yet.
Vitamin B12 deficiency in early childhood is an important cause of neurodevelopment, delay, and regression. Most of these cases occur in exclusively breastfed infants of deficient mothers. Symptoms and signs of vitamin B12 deficiency appears between the ages of 2 to 12 months and include vomiting, lethargy, failure to thrive, hypotoma. What is that? Hypotonia, and arrest or regression of developmental skills. Approximately one half of this case exhibit abnormal movements, variously described as tremors, twitches, what is that, chorea, or
Myoclonus.
urinary concentrations of whatever the fuck that is. What is that? Methylmalonic acid and homocysteine are characteristically elevated in vitamin B12 deficiency.
So if you want to just scroll down to the conclusion,
Thanks for making me read that.
What do you
Axel.
get
I
out of
appreciate
that?
I get that it's necessary for child development.
So there we go. So that ultimately, I think where we agree is on the science that we can prove. Where we disagree is in the hypotheticals that require a moral foundation to actually substantiate claims. And because at the very beginning, I know it seemed almost unnecessary and like I was talking in circles, but that's where I needed to know where your moral claim of telling me or someone else that they ought to do something based off of your individual preferences. Because if
I
you're,
still don't think it's preferences, though.
but it is if you can only get B12 from animals.
But we can get it from fortified foods. Again, modern society.
But now we're going.
we can-
Type in
Hold
Adrian
on,
of the
hold on. What is that?
bioavailability of B12.
What does that? What do you mean fortified foods?
I mean, fortified foods like that give us the supplementation synthetically that we need. Like
Synthetically,
B12
right.
is a
But with
fortified.
You
that-
can make it in a lab essentially.
Yeah.
Without needing to get it from an animal.
But is it real? Like it
Well,
does
yeah,
the
it's
same.
real. Yeah, it's real.
It's the same.
Yeah, it's real. But the bioavailability is my argument. Is how much more bioavailable is it? And also what other anti-nutrients come with those sources? Like let's say you're talking about beans. What about the lectin concentration in beans and how adverse of a reaction the human anatomy has to that toxic poison that is a plant protein we can't digest? And is it worth taking in all these bad nutrients for the sake of some good nutrients if we could get the same nutrients from a better source without any of the bad?
Yes, because the victim involved.
Okay.
And
So now we're going back
and
to the
beans
moral
are
worldview. Where
and
do you
then
get
the
morals
beans
from,
are
right?
adequate. All right.
But also, just to kind of on his side here, if it's not readily available, right? But at some point it will, just like anything else,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Over time, let's say in the next 50
If
years.
B12, if we could just synthesize it and not kill animals anymore.
Right.
The problem is the bioavailability again, the anti-nutrient argument, all these other arguments that are independent.
So what do you mean
from
by the
B12.
bioavailability?
When I say bioavailable, it's how well can it be absorbed in the body.
Okay, so I thought you were talking about just availability.
No,
in general.
bioavailability.
Okay,
How available is it in the body to be absorbed?
gotcha.
Yeah, it's said that whenever animals eat the proteins and all of these things, they become more bioavailable and we can use them better.
So
literally.
do you believe in that though?
I don't necessarily. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. Again, the middleman.
think the
the middleman
lab-grown-
argument, and there's many cases of people being vegan for decades.
Yeah,
and,
I
and-
think-
and they're fine.
Yeah.
They can be
I'm not
bodybuilders.
saying
They
a
can
vegan,
do everything.
I'm not saying a vegan can't be adequately.
So what do we
Okay.
get from it being more bioavailable? What can the
It
people
goes back
who
to
get,
the moral argument for a child developing the right way.
well, okay. What about for us right now? Me and you.
Me and you.
Yeah.
It goes to someone like me with my Crohn's and my specific health condition qualifies me to only eat what's appropriate for the human anatomy. And it seems to be that only meat is appropriate for what my body is reacting to.
Okay. Well, I think that you could.
And I think-
I do want to say, like, I did see your whole Crohn's things. It was super sad, and I'm glad that you've popped back from it super fucking quick. By the way, I was just like, what the hell? This dude's a superhuman. So yeah,
that,
congrats on you. But I do believe that you could have done it. In a vegan way. I'm not saying you should have. I'm glad you found what worked for you as quick as you did.
So I did try it in a vegan way.
Okay.
I tried the brat diet. I tried a pure greens diet. I tried every diet until I got to the carnivore diet.
Okay, so what I understand is from Crohn's, it's like inflammation in your intestines.
Remember that cecum that we drew?
Yeah.
My cecum and my ileum, the connection from my small intestine into my large intestine,
Uh-huh.
that area is super sensitive. And it happens to be that plants that react in that colon are the most hypersensitive reactions that I have, or are the sources that I have the most hyperreactivity to.
Okay, because I was thinking, like, meat causes inflammation, right?
No.
Red meat?
No.
No, there's no studies that show
No
that.
studies, because what are the studies that qualify red meat and the correlation of it with inflammation?
The ones that
Using bread.
American diet.
Literally, standard American
Okay.
diet. Now, do you kind of see where I'm coming from on a lot of this, bro?
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna tell you this right now, specifically with my Crohn's. If broccoli and grass, we'll just say broccoli and leaves and spinach and kale, if that would have cured my Crohn's, I'd be debating. We wouldn't even be debating. You and I would be propagating the necessity of the vegan diet for human flourishment. We would be. We would not be arguing. But because I realized that a certain diet didn't jive with my disease, I had to explore all these different routes and the why. And the why is where I've gotten to the conclusions of all the stuff I've argued today, namely in the moral protection of developing children in their youth as they get to adulthood. And the way I look at it is, if I wasn't raised off hot dogs and macaroni, if I wasn't raised off not just poor quality meat, but also an abundance of vegetables that are also poor quality in my diet, I'm curious how much I could have prevented a lot of the health conditions that I now deal with. I think my health conditions now are an indirect consequence of poor nutritional development in my early stages. And I think if I would have eaten more of a diet that was fulfilled with the essential nutrients, I would have been able to bypass a lot of these compromised health conditions that I currently live with.
But would it only be meat?
Yeah, I was
If
going to
you
say,
could
is
go
it a
back.
shot in the dark? Is it a shot
Or
in
would
the
it be
dark to
both?
say that if you were just eating, if you were if you were raised a vegan diet, would you have had the mishaps in your later
I believe
life?
it would have been worse.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, this is all
Yeah.
speculation, but I believe that because of, again, the deficiency of the essential nutrients in and of itself is going to be like the biggest marker for me to be like, that's why I would have been less healthy over time, because I'm not getting those essential nutrients. The second argument would be that I'm developing a chronic association with the negative nutrients that are in all those plants over time. And I think that's what really caused my Crohn's, is I was eating a lot of BS processed foods, namely a lot of convenient plant-based foods that, let's just say something like, you may not think it's plant-based, but it is, something like Oreos, right? I was eating a lot of trash, sugar-dense foods that were undergirded in their plant structure and their plant makeup that caused my body to have this nasty shutdown due to all these toxic bad chemicals that only come from plants. And so I think if I went back, only ate meat, especially for a long duration of my life, I wouldn't have accumulated those bad chemicals from the plants, like lectins, oxalic acid, phytic acid, you name it.
So you said plant-based, a part of your plant-based diet was Oreos?
No. I'm
So
saying,
like, what were you eating whenever you said that you tried vegan?
I was
for
eating
your
bread.
Crohn's?
I was eating whole grain bread. I was eating rice. I was eating salads. I was eating arugula, which I don't think is a bad plant. I have a lot of plants I approve of, bro. Like, that's what you got to realize. I don't think plants you need to avoid completely.
Yeah.
But we need to be appropriate in how we're qualifying their place in everybody's diet.
I'm just curious of how, like, whenever you said, okay, I'm going to try vegan and see
Oh,
if
you're
that
talking about with
helps
the
me.
Crohn's?
Yeah.
Okay, my bad. No,
what
all
were
of that
what
stuff
you
was
were
leading up to
eating
the
and, like,
Crohn's.
how
No.
long you were doing it till you were like, this isn't it.
All of the stuff I was talking about, the bad eating, when I referenced the Oreos, was leading up to the Crohn's.
Oh, okay.
Crohn's, I get sick.
Okay.
I'm now sick. I've lost 50 pounds. I need to figure out what foods work good for Mitchell, right? They initially told me I needed to eat a high roughage, namely soluble fiber, plant-based diet. They gave me low FODMAP, right? So low fermentable glyceride, diglyceride, whatever. It's a low FODMAP, low fermentable diet that was premised in all of these different plants. They told me to avoid meat completely, which I did. And so as a result, I was eating, namely a greens shake every morning that had all the greens you would get from AG1 and all this other stuff.
Oh,
Your
okay.
necessary green shake that they would have you take. And by the way, everything I followed was from a guy who called it the Maker's Diet, who was a Christian in the 90s that used all of these vegetables to substantiate his Crohn's recovery when he got better from Crohn's. So my first Crohn's person that I'm learning from wrote a book in the 90s about how these plants and these specific vegetarian, vegan-like approaches helped resolve his Crohn's. So I followed everything he said in that book.
So why did
So
it not
did it
maybe
or
not
did it
work?
not?
It
Yeah,
made it worse.
maybe not work for you just because like the soil composition. Like, why do you think it was so different?
Maybe.
Or is it
I
just
think it's because the
your-
anti-nutrients.
No,
I
I'm
think it's because
asking,
the anti-nutrients.
did it help with? Did it work for that guy you're talking about?
He can claim that. I don't know enough about what his defining of worked was. Let's say he's still bloating and he still has diarrhea infrequently and he still has small strictures from
Is
his
he on
Crohn's.
medication?
And let's say he's on medication. I don't know.
Okay.
This was in the 90s. So that's where using anecdotes is self-limiting, first and foremost.
Right.
But my whole point is, I think the reason why when I tried a vegan, tried a vegetarian, tried a Mediterranean, tried a pescatarian, tried a, I always think Episcopalian and pescatarian. I was, you know what I mean?
What is Episcopalian?
I know, I'm over here.
What even is that? Episcopalian?
Pescatarian, it's a Christian denomination whenever I switch the two. Yeah, there's a difference. That's a whole nother convo.
Okay.
I tried every single diet essentially until I got to the carnivore diet. And every diet I tried, namely when they were plant dense and plant based, caused flare-ups based off of, in my opinion, the irritability of the bad nutrients from those sources.
Okay.
Namely the lectin concentration. Do you know what a lectin is? Do you know what oxalic acid is?
No,
Do you know what phytic acid is?
No.
So as a vegan,
Why is that bad?
oh, clipped. Why is that bad? Why is that bad? that's just a topic for another discussion. It's going to be how these nutrients, for example, oxalic acid. Oxalic acid, when you have these bad nutrients in the body, they bind to certain chemicals that is with that food. Best example is if you have something like oxalic acid, which is heavily dense in kale and spinach, namely raw. If you cook it, you can kind of cook out a lot of that oxalic acid. The nutrients you think you're getting from the kale and the spinach isn't wrong. Like, you're right. If you want to list out all the nutrients you get from kale and spinach. But the oxalic acid binds with calcium in the body. And so there's a higher propensity. This would be a study I'll send you. This would be a study I don't know if Adrian will be able to find it immediately. But there's a higher propensity amongst vegans for kidney stones. And the reason why is because they're eating a higher dense food system. They're eating a food system that is higher dense with oxalic acid, and oxalic acid in the body in abundance binds to the calcium. The binding of the calcium in the kidneys is what causes a kidney stone.
Okay.
And so if you don't know what phytic acid is or oxalic acid is or lectins are, you're not truly considering the negative implications that a lot of these, we'll call them anti-nutrients, a lot of these bad nutrients, you're not considering how that is implicating the health, namely in the development of the children.
But are they using whole foods in that study? That's always the question.
In what study?
In that study you just said right now.
They're using they're using just a vegan standard.
But are they whole foods?
Vegan foods, for the most part, in the studies that I've read.
Or are they eating Oreos? That's what I'm
Right,
asking.
yeah. So vegan studies, for the most part, from what I've read, the methodology is always to try to make them look better anyway. The one I'm referencing was a side anecdote amongst a bunch of other good numbers. So it was essentially like vegans had better numbers, better outcomes on everything, except they had a little bit more kidney stones. Like, that was the caveat in that specific study I'm referencing. And I'll send you it so you can see. But the idea behind that is, if all your numbers are good, but you're worse off on this particular thing, why are you worse off in that particular thing? Because of the bad nutrients, namely the oxalic acid that is in the plants, specific plants in particular. And that's just one aspect of a bad nutrient. We're not talking about lectins, which is gluten. If you think about gluten, gluten is a type of lectin, which is just a plant protein that we can't process. When we think of gluten, it's really the gliadine protein that is a subsect of the gluten that we can't process. So technically, everybody is having a bad reaction, an irritable response to gluten, but it's how it manifests for the individual to be worthy of disqualifying that food source. So like, my wife has celiac. She eats one small piece of bread, she gets super sick. Maybe you guys eat a small piece of bread, you may get a little bloated, you may not even feel anything.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that the lectin isn't bad for the human
Or
body.
we've discussed with rice in certain cultures, like they can handle it better.
So with all that being said, the consideration, because you don't know about those anti-nutrients, my only advice to you would be to look into the negative health outcomes for phytochemicals that humans can't process, namely lectins, oxalic acid, and phytic acid.
Okay, well, yeah, and I'll definitely do that. I'm always down to learn more, and like you said, if I found out that my newborn needs meat in some kind of way to be able to develop, I mean, I will get that. I'm never the one to be stubborn. I'm always okay to change my mind, but I just don't think that it's necessary
You're
right
savage.
now.
I appreciate that openness, though.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I know I've died on this hill with a lot of people and had this conversation, but if I were ever to feel like I need it, I would go back. And if I was in a survival situation, I would eat meat.
So that's where we.
But really quick, I did want to reply to
let's
what
do
you were
closing points right now,
what you were saying about like the kidney stones and all these bad health markers. Again, like, we're in a modern society where if we put more effort into actually trying to figure out these health issues, like I think a kidney stone is a minor problem to
you had a kidney stone?
No, I have no, compared to just like what the animals go through. My main thing here is
But
what
now
the
you're
animals go
comparing the human value to the animal value again.
Not really, because we're not dying in that process. If we
But
were
we're
dying,
suffering. We're suffering.
I think it's worth it. Like, we suffer for our children. We have dominion over the animals, like you said. We suffer for our children. I think it's worth it, and it's actually like better as a man to protect the innocent creatures who don't have a voice and suffer for them.
I agree that as a man, it is important to protect the innocent 100%. Where you're defining that line of innocent is where
I mean, do you have a dog?
I don't. I have 2 cats, though.
And do you think they're individuals that...
Yeah, but you best believe when they were acting a fool, I was disciplining them in a way that I wouldn't discipline a child.
Yes, I agree, but you wouldn't kill them over, and you
No,
wouldn't
but
think it was okay if someone
also
breeded your cats and was eating them.
No, but I also wouldn't cause them to suffer unnecessarily either.
But I mean, what if I need what's in the cat to function optimally, so I need to eat the cats? What if? I mean, people eat dogs in China, but
we'd
view that as wrong. But
I don't
they
think
say
because those sources aren't. They don't possess the essential nutritional profile that's conducive for human development.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Those animals you just listed, cats and dogs, aren't nutritionally dense enough with the essential nutrients for proper human development.
I mean, but they still think that they get their nutrients from them. They get their proteins, and they survive off of them. Maybe
Asians or whoever
yeah,
you're talking about.
The people who the people who eat dogs,
the videos come out.
the Yulin people who eat
I'm
dogs.
not defending
I mean,
those people who eat dogs.
they're surviving off of that. They don't know about the certain nutrients that they're not getting.
Right, but they're also limited to the resources of food they have, so that's why they're eating that.
Yeah, I was about to say, if you're hungry, you're gonna
eat anything. Yeah, go to if anything, we could make that's a whole nother argument where it's like go to a fucking island and try to survive just eating plants. Good luck trying to find which plants you can survive off of.
Yeah, no,
we could say we're very fortunate right now to even have this fucking debate.
Yeah,
no doubt.
100%. But I would say, just for that argument, it's not a moral equivalent because any of our domesticated animals that we treat as pets, there has been, from my understanding, a dividing line of their nutritional worthiness, which is why we disqualify them from being eaten to begin with.
Yeah, but I just still don't think it should be a question of their what they can do for us, what they can do to benefit us. They're individuals with again subjective experience.
Right. What about a bug? Is a bug an individual with subjective experience?
I honestly don't know the answer, but I know the answer for animals.
Because it's reasonable. Because there's reasonable doubt, though. Because there's reasonable doubt. Is it worth throwing out the billions and trillions of insects we kill? Is it worth dismissing their worthiness as living creatures?
No, but we're going to go back.
We're back on the bug talk, bro.
No, that's good. I at least heard
right.
no, it's not. So that's all right.
No, that's not what. But cause there would be more if we're eating meat. But that's
fair enough.
Right,
yeah,
okay, we're going in circles on that one. The only thing I would ask to end this is, how do you feel about just population control? You know, like when animals start to get too large, diseases start to come of that. And
I mean, I think that's happening more in slaughterhouses when their combined diseases is coming from that. Right. But I mean, if we just
it happens
out
in nature,
like if we just let all the animals
CWD with deer, you know,
like if we just said all the animals are free.
If we don't control their population.
If we don't control the population by
killing, we have invasive species coming in like coyotes, just now being an invasive species and ruining a bunch of other life indirectly.
Mm-hmm.
Like livestock, you're saying?
Just in general,
like
other animals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, or spreading diseases. You know, as populations, like you said, usually in confined spaces, the disease will spread more. But diseases spread through nature.
So is it worth? Well. So if there are invasive animal species, like let's say something like a coyote or wolves or deer, is it morally justified to kill those things to protect all the other life?
I think so. If they're killing people, like again, you're protecting yourself.
Just other animals.
No, the other animals.
The other animals, huh?
Let's say you're going to have a higher population of coyotes because we're not hunting them. So you're going to have less fawns. You're going to have more deer being killed.
You're going to have a bunch of other animals dying because we won't kill the invasive species.
Because usually coyotes will go after younger deer.
I mean, I'd say yes. They might have to. You might have to control that population, or you could think of other solutions though.
And they
could think of other
solutions
though to relocating.
I mean, the line. There's an arbitrary line of how you're qualifying who's worthy of dying and who's not.
Well, no, I said you might be able to do that, but you could also do like relocating.
How would you relocate a bunch of coyotes though?
I mean, I don't know myself.
You'd have to hunt them down.
Yeah.
How do you
which
do
is
that
what
with
they're
wild
doing.
hogs?
Which is what I hear they're doing.
How do you do it with wild hogs?
In places like California,
right?
What do you mean hunt them down?
Where they're having to hire.
Them?
They're having to hire people to go in and
just
kill them.
How about the invasive iguana species in Florida? It's like people will literally, these iguanas will fall out of the tree. People will grab them. The city is essentially saying, please kill and eat these animals because they're invasive.
I mean, I think that we could do euthanizing.
But so now what's the moral line drawn with euthanasia? How are you qualifying who deserves to get euthanized and who doesn't?
Well, I mean that's just something that we have dominion.
Well, we're going back to the Christian argument. You can't use the Christian argument. We're staying in your.
But there would still be a
secular
death.
home view.
I think that's what it comes down to.
I mean, there wouldn't because they're being euthanized. They just wouldn't have.
Well, they're dying.
They're dying. So you're saying just castrate them? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, not all of them. I mean, like just some of them, just to keep the population in control.
Which would inflict pain, though, right?
Right, the suffering, which is the whole point of this argument, and harm.
Yes.
So then,
but not killing.
We're
doing the best that we can.
So not euthanize. You're saying castrate. You're saying
neuter.
I thought euthanization was
keeping them from having
killing
children.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, euthanization's where they literally hook you up to
Peacefully
an
kill
IV.
it,
And
yeah.
they
Okay. Sorry, I'm thinking castration.
No,
Okay,
you're
well,
good.
castration,
Scratch all that.
You're good,
euthanasia,
you're good.
either one. I think at the end of the day, your whole thing is the killing of the animal, right? That's like really where it stems from.
Yes,
Killing.
but still,
it's not just suffering. It's not just harm. It's just the killing of the
unnecessary killing. Yeah, and yeah, I get population control. That is a good question.
Just full circle, and this will be like my closing essentially. I believe that it's not unnecessary because my necessity, though we haven't defined how we made that moral jump, we haven't defined that, but we'll grant it. I think it's absolutely necessary to eat animals because of the nutritional profile and the essential nutritional density for proper human development. That's ultimately where my stance is. And as a result, that idea of the necessity versus the moral ought is almost irrelevant if we don't agree on that scientific foundation. And it doesn't sound like we really do, in that you think that, no, you don't need L-carnitine, you don't need all these other ones, you only need to supplement B12 and then you'll be fine. That's safe to say?
I mean, I'm not even sure that you need to supplement B12. That's just
Okay,
honestly
so
what
you may even be on the you don't even need B12.
All right,
That's
well,
honestly
we're gonna
just
keep
what
going
I hear,
back and
but-
forth.
No, that's what this closing statement was, though, is being able to
Your
confirm.
closing argument then on this?
I mean, just basically that we've seen many cases throughout history of people being vegan and living full lives. I just ask that people, look at their pets and see that there's no real difference between a dog and a cow and a chicken. They all want to live. They don't. We're literally oppressors. If you've ever been against anything like racism, oppressing any kind of people, you should be. Yeah, it basically is speciesism. We're saying that
You're discriminating against.
Yeah, we're saying that this one deserves to live and this one doesn't, just on our arbitrary feeling. So I just think that people should take a look and think that if I can live and do everything that I want to do without doing this, should I be eating animals? And if anyone wants to get into it more, I suggest that they watch Christspiracy, like I said, or Dominion on YouTube, and just see what happens to these animals and just see if they want to keep supporting it.
All right, cool. Hey, so I appreciate you both coming on. You guys, you're welcome back on. You're welcome back on as well if we want to have this conversation.
Yeah, if you ever want to have this convo where it ain't me all up in your shit, feel free, bro.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just don't know enough about like the health markers and things like that. But that's not the crux of my argument.
Right, but that is the crux of a part of the. And Gabe, we got maybe a couple of minutes ago. It's the crux of ultimately.
When the closing argument.
It's the crux of ultimately though, where the crux of the argument is the moral standard. And the moral standard hasn't really been defined. So if we're talking about ultimately suffering, and we've already talked about the protective moral standard of human development, I think the audience can draw their own conclusions.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
All right. I appreciate you both. I learned a lot today just from, half the shit I didn't know what the fuck you guys were talking about, but I appreciate you guys explaining it to me. I think this will be good. It really, what I kind of come down, my whole consensus to this whole argument or debate is that there's not enough studies, to be honest.
Nor would there probably ever be enough studies.
So it's kind of just subjective, and to do whatever fits your preference of life, whatever gives you the most optimization you feel like you need for your own life. Just go with it. I get your side. I don't want animals to die in factory farming. Neither does Mitch. Yep. I understand your side because I eat meat as well. I hunt. I think there's a valuable thing in that as well, especially to people that do eat meat just from supermarkets. I think you should actually, if you're going to do that, actually have to feel the feeling of taking that animal's life. I think there's something in that you should understand and would probably give you a better understanding of like overconsumption. Like you shouldn't do that because things are having to die in order for you to eat that. So you shouldn't just go, gain 200 pounds, and you walking around fat as fuck. And it's just, it's messed up. You know what I mean? It's messed up to the animals. Even though we do kill these animals in order to eat them, I still have respect for them. So I just want you to understand that as well.
100%.
And I think, we as vegans, we do appreciate that, even though though it seems like sometimes we don't.
Yeah,
no,
that's a great
anecdote,
bro.
So I appreciate you both, man, and let's do this again.
Yeah,
so,
heck yeah.
Cool.
Thanks.
Solid.